In August 2016, we embarked on our Alaska cruise on the Norwegian Sun. On August 22nd, we flew out of Green Bay heading for Vancouver, Canada, where we will meet the ship and embark on our Alaska cruise. After the completion of this cruise, I will have been in all 50 states of the United States. We spent the night at the Marriott Hotel in Vancouver, and since we didn't have to check into the ship until afternoon, we decided to spend the morning geocaching in a little park near the hotel, where we found this cute little chapel and several geocaches guarded by little black bunnies. Tony was impressed by the size of the trees in this park. I don't think he's turned into a tree hugger. I think he's a youper measuring up how much firewood's in this tree. Finally, it was time to board the ship and go through the cattle call process called ship embarkation. Eventually, we got on board the ship and headed up to the buffet for some lunch, and then spent the time exploring the ship and checking out the Vancouver harbor. The ship got underway about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we spent some time up on the upper deck watching the city recede into the distance and meeting some of our fellow cruisers. At the entrance to the harbor, there were lots of ships moored, waiting their turn to come in and unload their cargo. We headed below eventually for a scrumptious dinner in the main dining room. After that, we headed down to our cabin and went to bed early. We were all pooped out after all the travel and the 3-hour time change. Day 2 is a sailing day, and we're going to be cruising up the Inside Passage along the coast of Canada. We accessed our handy-dandy little agenda of onboard activities that's delivered daily to our stateroom to decide what we want to do today. Tony decided to participate in a basketball free throw shooting contest where he got second place, and I decided to go and participate in some trivia games and then try my luck in the casino. We spent some time sunning on the deck, had a scrumptious dinner, and went to a variety show in the Stardust Lounge. Later, we went down to our cabin and found this cute little guy. It's day 3, August 24th, and we are going to be spending the day in Ketchikan, Alaska. We decided not to book any shore excursions in this port and just spend the time exploring on our own. The first thing we did was board a free shuttle bus that took us around the town so that we could get the lay of the land. Ketchikan is the salmon capital of the world, and the Ketchikan River runs right through the center of town, and this week the salmon are spawning. So Tony and I decided to take a walk up to the river and watch the fish.
See them all?
Yes, I do. There are huge salmon everywhere. I decided this is a good time to give my GoPro camera an underwater workout. We continued our walk through town and found this little park where the kids were enjoying the beautiful day. As usual, the kids just loved Tony, so we spent a little time in the park chatting with the kids and the moms before heading on up to the Indian Totem Center. As would be expected at the Totem Heritage Center, this place has lots of totem poles, along with other Native American art. We found our first Alaskan geocache right here in the shadow of the totem poles. It's a gorgeous day, so we decided to continue our walk and head on down to Old Town Ketchikan. In the gold rush days, this part of Ketchikan was the red light district and was populated by ladies of the night. The buildings are restored to look like they were back in the day, and we found this one that says Dolly's House, where both men and salmon come upstream to spawn. We spent some time wandering in and out of the shops and looking at all of the Alaska-themed gifts, and we found this little bear, Go Pack Go. We bumped into our cruise director Ian in this little coffee shop, along with several of the cast members for the shows, and we spent an hour or two just visiting and getting their stories. We had another great evening of shipboard fun and retired to our cabin to find this little critter waiting for us. It's August 25th, and this is the 4th day of our trip, and we are in Juneau, Alaska. Today we're going to be taking a bus out to the Mendenhall Glacier, and we will be boarding a rubber raft, paddling across Mendenhall Lake, and then down the Mendenhall River for some whitewater rafting fun.
You know, every now and then, I think you might like to hear something from us. Nice, easy. There's just one thing. You see, we never, ever do nothing. Nice, easy. We always do it nice and rough. But we're going to take the beginning of this song and do it easy. But then we're going to do the finish rough. It's the way we do Proud Mary. And we're rolling, rolling, rolling. Say we're rolling, rolling, yeah, rolling on the river, the river.
It's cold. go.
There's an
There's an eagle flying.
We came safely off the river, even though we did have a bit of a rough landing when two guides had to come and physically pull us back to our landing spot because we overshot it a bit. But we turned in our waders and got back on the bus and headed back to the ship. As we left Juneau Harbor in the evening, Tony got these shots of a sister ship pulling out at the same time we were. Isn't it beautiful? Oh hum, a wonderful night at sea, music, dancing, fine dining, and then our little towel animal when we went down to our cabin. What a life. This morning we're in Skagway, Alaska for day 5 of our cruise. It's August 26th. Today Tony and I will be taking separate shore excursions. I'm going out into the wilderness on horseback, and Tony is taking a train up into the mountains, getting on a bicycle, and pedaling 15 miles down the mountain. My outing started at 8 a.m. while Tony's isn't scheduled till later in the morning, so I left Tony sound asleep, got on the bus, and headed out to horse camp.
The Skagway River. Up this river, there's a valley, and about 20 miles up is the Canadian border. There's seafood, because a lot of fish come right up to the shores here. Then you go to them from the ones on the interior, they call them brown bears.
Once we got to horse camp, I put on my rain slicker just in case, got my riding helmet, and waited for my horse assignment. And here she is, little Peaches. She looks so calm and gentle, but my guide tells me that she runs the roost in the pasture, doesn't like to have other horses in front of her, so I'll be riding in the front of the pack, right behind the guide. I have a feeling Peaches and I will get along just fine, because I like to be in the head of the pack too. They had some rain here in the night, so the trail is pretty muddy. Our guide took a moment to give us some safety instructions in case we meet up with a bear, which apparently they do on a daily basis. She assures us that the horses are not afraid of the bears, and the bears don't want to take on a big herd of horses, so we should be fine. And with that, I settled into the saddle, relaxed, and enjoyed my beautiful ride. What a wonderful ride. No bear today, but we saw lots of other little critters, eagles, rabbits, squirrels, and saw lots of greenery and fungus and lots of beautiful nature. Then back on the bus for our ride back to Juneau. Tony's excursion starts just about the time I'll be getting back to town, so I'm going to spend the afternoon by myself just wandering around and checking things out. Aha, Look what I found, a quilt shop. I bought some beautiful batiks with moose and eagles and other Alaskan wildlife. Check out this old steam engine with the big snowblower in the front. I guess it's back from in the 1920s or 30s, but one of the natives here assured me that they still use it. Speaking of trains, Tony got off the ship around 10:30 or 11 o'clock and met up with his group to get ready for his outing up in the mountains. For the first part of the journey, Tony and 9 other people who are taking this excursion headed to the train depot. They'll be boarding this train, which just happens to be painted in Packer colors, for their ride up the mountain. Tony said one of the other passengers really reminded him of Paul Ryan, one of our state politicians. So he went up to the guy, introduced himself, and made him do the politician handshake. Here's a montage of Tony's friend and the real Paul Ryan. I'll leave it up to you to decide whether you think there's a resemblance there. I can kind of see it. Finally, it was all aboard. Pretty big train, holding probably between 800 and 1,000 passengers heading up into the wilderness. Stunning scenery. Miles and miles of unspoiled wilderness. Beautiful waterfalls, virgin timber, rushing river, just fresh, clean air. Partway up the mountain, the train stopped to let off these 4 hikers who are going to bushwhack out into the wilderness. Hopefully they have the good fortune to come upon one of these little cabooses that have been set aside for hikers to use for $35 a night. When the train reached the summit of the mountain, they stopped, let off the bikers, and then the train continued on its way. Each rider was assigned a bike, a helmet, and given the safety spiel. Rule number 1, don't pass the guide. Apparently Tony had a little trouble with this one since he thought they were going a little slower than what he wanted to do, and the mountain was quite steep and he had to ride the brake most of the way. Rule number 2, if you see a bear, don't go speeding off because that will cause the bear to chase you. Tony had a little trouble with this rule too, because he figured he only has to be faster than the slowest biker, and he figured he had that covered. And then sure enough, they were stopped for a water break, and wouldn't you know, along came a bear. The guide reminded everyone to stay calm, don't get excited. If the bear comes too close, they would clap, and he should run away. By the time the bear got this close, everybody's clapping. The bear stopped, checked him out, and then turned and headed down the path. The bear didn't go far though. He just went a couple hundred yards down the road and then stopped and turned back toward the group, kept an eye on him for quite a while. Tony said his heart hadn't been racing that hard in years.
So they keep it open all winter long so that they can bring in goods from the lower 48 up into the interior of Alaska and into the Yukon. They've got a saying, it's that red is dead, white you're all right. So if you go into the red, you're off the road, you're into the river valley.
Come on, raise your head, little guy.
So I'm not sure what he's going for right now.
What he's eating?
Yeah, they dig up dandelion roots. We saw a lot of black bears in the beginning of this summer because there were dandelions all over the shoulders of the road. The dandelions like that disturbed kind of habitat. We're right at the shoulder of the road, so we would see them eating those all the time. And it was funny because they can't digest them properly. They like to snack on them when they're coming out of hibernation, they're really hungry, but they can't digest them properly. So they ferment in their stomach and make them kind of drunk. It's like a weird dandy wine for the bears, yeah. So I don't know if he's digging up the root systems that are still there. He's definitely eating on something. Should we give him some space? Exactly, as long as it's not a...
No surprise here, but Tony managed to find that steam engine with the big snowblower on it too. When we got back on the ship, we found that the Newlywed Show, which Tony and I had starred in the night before, was playing on all the ship's monitors. Tony had not wanted to be a participant in this activity, but when our names were drawn with a little bit of coaxing, he joined the fun.
Wait. And you can't come up by yourself. I really need your husband as well. It's kind of a prerequisite to the newlywed game. You can't come up by yourself, sweetheart. You need to convince them. There you go. Come on. Imagine your wife has just been hypnotized. What will be the first thing you would ask her to do? So, Tony. Oh, yes. start cruising, but come on, let's get on. After you're in for a good night with them. Look, will you switch back, for goodness sake? Come on. Don't shake your head, get back. Go on. Good luck. First question, I want to know, what is your most annoying habit, guys? What is it? All right. Sorry, Tony, what's your most annoying habit?
Too negative.
Yes, that's a match. And a positive result for the negativity. There we go. Give him a kiss, Anne. Give him a kiss. Positive reinforcement. There you go. Positive reinforcement. There you go. See? Good job. All right. Now, it's a joke. Question number 2. Gentlemen, when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you touch? Right, and Tony. What's the first thing you touch in the morning, Tony?
Well, I usually go to the bathroom.
So it would be. You can be general here, Tony. In general. Thank you. All right. But it is a match. Very good. Yourself. Give him a kiss. Give him a kiss. Go on. This is the most action you've had all week, isn't it? This. It's fabulous. See, bringing cows to put the parrot in. Eventually, you decide to put the parrot in the bedroom. Okay? And it's been in there for a couple of months, soaking in the ambiance, all the sounds and noises, things that are generally said in the bedroom. After being in your bedroom for 2 months, what would be the most repeated phrase or noise your parrot would say back? It's not fair. Why me? We've got this one. You never know what the heck she's going to say. Yes, I know it's a hard question, Lowell. No match there. Tony, what would your parrot say? That is a match. Very good. And you're going to have to kiss him again. I'm sorry. You got to get in there. Come on. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. All right, final question. Okay. And Tony, which would you? You've just stepped out of the shower. Which way?
Stretch limousine.
Yeah, that's a match. Yes. No wonder you want to be hypnotized. Oh, I can't help it. I can't. Give him a kiss. No. Right. Okay, furiously writing down the scores. And good lord. Right. Well, there we go. Right. Here are the scores. It's no surprise now, actually. Okay, here we go. So in third place, otherwise known as last, we've got Paul and Karen. And Lowell and Ashley. So the winners tonight with 60 points, it's Tony and Anne.
The next 2 days of our cruise are going to be spent at sea. The first day, August 27th, will be cruising Glacier Bay in the Glacier National Park. And the second day, we will be entering Hudson Glacier Bay and viewing the Hudson Glacier. As we entered Glacier Bay, we stopped and onboarded a park ranger who spent the morning sharing with us the history of Glacier Bay and telling us all about glaciers. Glacier Bay was designated as a national monument in 1925 and became a national park in 1980. The park consists of 3,283,000 acres, which is about 5,130 square miles. The deepest point in Glacier Bay is 1,410 feet below sea level. The tides change every 6 hours and range from 5 feet to 18 feet. An extreme tide can change 23 feet in 6 hours. 250 years ago, a single large tidewater glacier covered all of Glacier Bay. By 1750, the glacier began to retreat and has now retreated 60 miles to the head of the bay. Currently, the glaciers cover about 2,000 square miles, or 27% of the park. At last count, there were 1,045 glaciers in the park. Over 50 of them are named glaciers. 7 of which are active tidewater glaciers that calve icebergs into the sea. Most of the park glaciers originate between elevations from 8,000 to 15,000 feet. The ice that we see breaking off and falling into the bay today is estimated to be around 450 years old by the time it gets to the front of the glacier. The park rangers shared with us some of the facts about the wildlife in the park. Right now there are 160 species of fish, 274 species of birds, 41 species of mammals, 3 species of amphibians, and no reptiles. Humpback whales spend the summer in Glacier Bay and then swim to Hawaii for the winter. We didn't see any whales today while we were in the park, but we did manage to see a whale last night while we were eating dinner on the ship. Meanwhile, as all this beautiful scenery is passing by, there are still activities going on inside the ship. All of Tony's beanbag tossing with Andrew and his friends this summer paid off, and he won first place in the Norwegian Sun beanbag toss competition. Sadly, all good things come to an end, and it's time to disembark the ship. It's day 9, August 29th, and we are stepping ashore in Seward, Alaska, boarding a bus and heading into Anchorage. Luckily for us, our plane doesn't leave until tomorrow night, so we will have this evening and all of tomorrow to spend in Anchorage. First thing we did when we got to Anchorage was check into our hotel and take a walk to find some geocaches. Our quest led us to the shores of Lake Hood, which is a seaplane base that is owned by the state of Alaska. Lake Hood is the world's busiest seaplane base, and it handles an average of 190 flights per day. And based on the number of planes that took off and landed on the water while we were there, that is no exaggeration. There are 780 plus planes parked around the shore of this lake. It's August 30th, our last day of vacation, and this morning we are heading downtown Anchorage, where we are going to grab a trolley and take in some sights. Our guide was fantastic. Here she's telling us about the Good Friday earthquake that happened in 1964.
It is 100 yards to the inlet. This huge chunk of land goes back to the Captain Cook statue, takes a right-hand turn down 4th Avenue. Remember, everything on the north side of 4th Avenue destroyed at that time when all of it dropped in Riverling all the way back to here. Now, when I first got here to Alaska, you could still see the rooftops of these buildings, and they were all cattywampus. A huge chain link fence was up, and the National Guard guarded this place night and day so that no one went down there and got hurt. The reason they did this, there were 21 aftershocks in the 2 weeks after the earthquake. 1 week to the day later, the very next Friday at 5:30 again, 7.1 level earthquake. It lasted a minute 36. This is the same size and length as the Northridge, California earthquake. Then finally, the Army came out and bulldozed down the houses, and that's when this forest began to grow after they bulldozed down the houses. The city of Anchorage graduated the dirt, the slope. It used to be a cliff, and beneath this forest are the photo albums, the china, the necklace left you by your mother in her will. No one could ever go back. It was just too dangerous. Now, what caused the land to fall? As these two gigantic platelets were colliding, it created friction, and friction creates heat. Because Alaska is so young, such a young landmass, the soils beneath were very unstable. And these soils underwent what is called liquefaction. When that friction got to the right temperature and with enough shaking, the land mass dropped. Of the 9 people who died in Anchorage, 7 died here when their homes dropped down into the ocean when it slid off. Their houses went below the ocean, and no one could rescue them before they died of hypothermia. Okay, all right, so you want to be a pilot, what do you got to do? First, you have to go to ground school and pass an FAA test. It's all the physics of flying. It's all the math and everything. Well, in Alaska, you can take that test at 14 and a half, and all the kids do. It's called Aviation Science, the most popular class in our school system. can get your pilot's license at 16, but in order to get that license, you have to spend 25 hours flying solo, which means by yourself, and you can start that process at 15. Period class, 30 kids in the class, 26 with driver's licenses, 11 already licensed pilots, 4 girls, 7 boys. Now my next door neighbors are commercial fishermen. They leave Alaska, Anchorage in May. It takes them 5 hours in their boat to get to their fish site. And they fish all summer, but they don't take 5 hours to come get groceries. They have a Super Cub, and a family member will fly over to get groceries. This summer, Sarah, their youngest, it was her turn because she was getting her hours in to get her license. She's 15. She would fly into the lake. I would pick her up, take her to Costco. We get the groceries, go back. She'd fly back to her family. Why was I involved in them getting their groceries? Old enough to drive a car. She's old enough to fly a plane to Anchorage, but she cannot drive 3 miles to Costco. And according to FAA records, 1 in 61 Alaskans is a pilot. Hassan says, but that's not how many Alaskans are flying. He goes, in the bush areas of Alaska, your grandma taught you how to fly. You don't take the FAA test. The family's been flying out there in that bush area for 50 years, the same plane, and doing all their own repairs. He guesstimates that for every licensed pilot in Alaska, there is someone flying around unlicensed. So he thinks 1 in 30 Alaskans fly, 1 in 61 is licensed to fly.
After we left the trolley, we wandered around town, taking in some of the Alaska-themed sights. Then we wandered down to the shore of the bay, checking out the mud flats and catching our first sight of Mount Denali, which used to be Mount McKinley, in the distance. Next, we headed back into town to the local bike shop, rented a couple of bikes, and took an 11-mile round-trip bike ride along the shores of the bay.
Oh, this way. I'm putting your finger on the tip of Denali. Down, 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 down. That way a little bit more. Now down, down, down. Right there. There, you got your finger on the top of Mount McKinley.
At the end of the day, we boarded our flight from Anchorage to Seattle. We will be traveling all night, going from Seattle to Chicago, and then Chicago to Green Bay, getting home just in time to see the sunrise. All in all, another great journey with my favorite traveling companion.